Hello, today I'm joined with the Animal Synergist Sarah Griffiths, and we're going to be talking about cat nutrition. Sarah's prepared a few tips and tricks that we can use to help our cats be healthier today and prevent disease tomorrow. Hi, Sarah. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Steph, how are you today?
Good, thank you. All right, question number one. Sarah, can you tell us what the difference is between feed and food?
Yeah, so feed and food are very different things. So if you're thinking about, I always like to think about it in human terms. So when we think about food, we think about a rotation of fruits, vegetables, fish, uh, you know, as much fresh food as we possibly can, and we get our full nutritional spectrum covered with many, many different types of foods. We don't sit down at our uh, breakfast table and dinner table and use a calculator to make sure that every single meal it has this much protein and this much calcium and this much everything, right? So when you're thinking about food, that's what we think of. And there's a funny term of human food versus pet food, and pet food really does refer to feed. So feed is extruded, it's pelleted normally or in cans, it's highly heat treated, it sometimes uses some questionable ingredients that maybe aren't the best quality, and then it's compensated for with vitamin mineral premixes that get added back in because the value of the food is very low. So the more premix or more synthetic vitamin and mineral supplementation that you see, the lower the value of the actual ingredients of the food, if that makes sense. So if you're feeding something that comes out of a bag that's pelleted and is balanced and complete by AFCO standards and is balanced exactly in every single meal, every single time you feed, in every single kibble almost, then you're feeding feed. That's feed. And that goes for horse feed, dog feed, cat feed. And somehow in people's minds that's become animal food, but it's very different than food. So I actually don't think about food and pet food and people food. There's just food. That's it. So if you can make that jump where you can think about food as, grass is not really human food, but it's food for many, many animals all over the world. Cows, horses, buffalo, but we don't call it horse food. It's just a source of food for that species. So if you can kind of think about food in that concept, you can apply that to any species, and especially with cats, this is really important. I guess we're going to talk about that more.
Yeah, that leads me to question number two. How can we make sure that our cats are getting a balanced diet?
Yeah, so cats are they're really different than other animals. They're considered obligate carnivores, and even with pet food, the pet feed industry, it's well established that cats can't eat a vegetarian diet because they need meat in their diet in order to survive. So they have been specializing as being hunters for so long that genetically, physiologically, anatomically, it's just there's no question. So I think everyone's on the same page there. Unfortunately, pet food or pet feed has become very removed from what cats really would eat if they're left to their own devices. So a lot of people don't know that cats are actually only partially domesticated. They're considered in the domestication process still, whereas dogs are quite domesticated, horses and cows. Cats can still go out and live somewhere and live on their own. And some dogs can do that too. So, and what they do is they go and they hunt. And so I think it's been more accepted that animal or cats in particular, they need to eat meat. And one of the issues with cats is there are a lot of nutritional diseases going on that, you know, I guess if you're not thinking nutritionally on a species appropriate level, these diseases would be considered idiopathic, which means they don't know the cause. You know, there's pancreatitis and triaditis and liver disease in cats is becoming more and more common. Kidney disease is just rampant, especially in older cats. Digestive diseases, and they all have a nutritional component to them. And if you're feeding something that is getting in the way or even like causing an insult, and mainly with cats, it is starch based. The problems that they're having has a lot to do with sugar, and diabetes is another really common problem. Obesity. A lot of cats are really overweight, and these are all nutritionally related diseases that are really related to cat feed. So if you can get your cat eating more like what it is actually supposed to eat, and you're eliminating all that starch from the diet, that's really the first thing to removing those barriers to having your cat be able to come back out of, recover from certain diseases. So if you're always putting that in their way every day, you're feeding them dry food, and they're basically having an insult every time they're eating. And that's what people don't really understand. So I'm a really huge advocate of raw for cats, but for really sick cats, sometimes we have to go with a modified cooked diet to get started too. But really looking at species appropriate nutrition.
Awesome. Thank you. Sarah, can you talk a little bit about why water is so important in our cat's diet?
Yes. So water is a nutrient, and most mammals and living things are made up primarily of water. I think over 80% of our bodies are made up of water. So that's a really important factor. And dry food for dogs and cats is a real problem, because it basically, there's a process called hydrolysis, which is when the food goes into your body, and then your body, actually your cells and your digestive system it has to modify that food in order to have it be absorbed into the cells. So if you are feeding a dry food, you are it's so much farther away from being in a digestible format, and the body actually has to use water from its own system to break that down into something that can be digested. So when you feed something that has moisture in it, and most food, that species appropriate foods are, around 80% moisture as well. So there's the difference is that when you feed a dry food, there's a period, there's a kind of a delay where the animal has to take water from its own body, put it into digestion. Then the animal gets thirsty. Then the animal goes and drinks water because it's dehydrated, and then rebalances itself. But with cats, the problem is that they have a really low thirst drive, which means that they don't get thirsty until they are almost emergency level thirsty. So they're actually really systemically dehydrated. So when you feed dry, that delay is quite drastic. And so they stay dehydrated for much longer. Then when you see your cat drinking water a lot, and when I say a lot, some people think, oh, my cat's drinking water, they're fine. If you see your cat drinking water more than twice a day, then they're in trouble. And if you are paying attention to that, and you can get them to a point where they're getting most of their moisture from their food, you will be miles ahead for preventing, especially preventing kidney disease. It's a huge problem with cats, and that's because they have this very low thirst drive and this very long delay of getting thirsty and then drinking water. So that's just such a huge part of making sure that your cat is super healthy.
Great tip, Sarah. Question 5 that we had while we're talking about cat nutrition, is exercise for house cats necessary?
I believe it is. I mean, some people think that there's no difference between having an indoor cat and an outdoor cat, but I actually have 2 cats that were raised on a farm. They've been Mausers their whole lives. I can't lock them in now. We have a couple of big dogs that protect them when they're out, and they run like, they just run their own health. They go hunting. They also eat raw inside, but they are like fine-tuned, always healthy. I never have to take them to the vet. My one cat, he's 5. I think he's had a tooth scaling once, very, and that's all I've ever had to do with him. And then I have an indoor cat who is so docile. He's just so incredibly like too friendly, and we have a lot of predators around, so I've been a bit hesitant. I take him out on a harness, but he doesn't get free access to go and do whatever he wants. And he actually has more difficulty maintaining himself than my other 2 cats. And so it's very interesting that I do feel there is quite a big difference between having an outdoor cat and an indoor cat. And I think their microbiomes are better when they can go out. And that is a whole other topic in itself. And, movement in all mammals increases your metabolism. It helps with immune function. So the more sedentary they are, the more they're at risk for obesity, diabetes. Even when they're fed raw food, I've seen really fat cats that eat raw. So making sure that they are not eating too much and that they're getting enough exercise, just like very common sense stuff. So teach your cat tricks. Cats are awesome at learning tricks. I know people don't think that they can do it, but you can really engage with your cat. You can, offer some catnip. You can offer toys, strings. They're cheap and they're fun, and then you can interact with your cat more. And also, if you get a kitten, if you can, always try to get 2 kittens. Because they exercise themselves and then they grow up together and they play together for most of their lives. So I really feel like if you have indoor cats and you want to keep them safe, from harm outside, either harness train them and or, do activities with them in the house to keep them fit. Because cats are so agile and so they're such active animals that I feel it does affect their immune health and their mental well-being too.
Sarah, before we go today, is there anything else you want us to remember for our feline friends?
Well, I do want to just say that I think that cats are quite different from dogs. And I know that some people kind of lump them into the same ballpark, but cats have a very unique, anyone who has a cat will tell you they're hilarious. But they're so specialized, and the reason that we love them is because they are such specialized hunters, and the things that they do are very much predatory behaviors that we find entertaining, but they're actually there for a reason. So I encourage everyone to really get to know about cats, because they're different, and the more you get to know about them, the more you get to appreciate them too.
Awesome, Sarah. Thanks for joining us today. For anyone who wants to know more on the cat nutrition subject, Sarah has a blog on the Adored Beast Apothecary website, and it explores this topic in great depth. Thanks for joining us today, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Steph.